is a European initiative that aims at implementing a trusted interconnected data infrastructure for Europe. I'm thrilled to have Alina Rubina join us, who is from DE-CIX and is leading the interconnection and networking working groups within GAIA-X. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Alina, who's going to teach us everything about GAIA-X. Thank you, Alina.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm really honored to be here. It's my first time in the EuroX, and I see some familiar faces, which already there are quite some people I know, also from the GAIA-X. I guess if there are no rules that need to be explained, Bijan, then I would start.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yes, there are some housekeeping rules, and that is that we are doing this meeting obviously in meeting mode. If you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand, and you can do that if you go down the participants list, and you can raise your hand, and we will take questions at the end. If you have, you can also type your questions, and there's always also the chat if you want to leave any comments there. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, so again, welcome everyone. Today I'm here to give you an insight into what GAIA-X is. So that's why we're here, to learn what GAIA-X is. And in order for me to understand into which level of details to go, we've prepared two polls. The word is going to be only the beginning, and then I'm going to go on with my slides. So Rebecca, could you please start the first question? Yes, if you could just answer, what do you think GAIA-X is? Maybe like we give you 30 seconds or so, and then maybe Rebecca, you can inform you on the outcome of the poll. Should you share the results, Rebecca? Okay, so majority, so 64% have an idea of what it is, but rather high level. 21% have never heard about it, and 14% here are members of the association. Cool. Okay, so then I will rather structure my talk accordingly. Yeah, so I guess I was already introduced, but maybe a short introduction again. I work in DE-CIX. I started working at DE-CIX from the last May, so May 2020. I am a research and R&D team led by Christoph Dietzel. And today I'm here to tell you about GAIA-X, the European take on cloud infrastructures and connection, the title of my today's presentation. So let's go on. At first, I wanted to give you a short overview of how it all started and when it all started and what are we having today. So around 2 years ago, in October 2019, GAIA-X was firstly announced and was firstly founded as a rather German initiative. And it was announced at Digital Summit 2019 by German Economy Minister Peter Altmaier. Already like 9 months later, by June 2020, Germany and France presented the technical concept and the organization structure. In September 2020, we had 22 German and French founding companies. Just to name few, there were DE-CIX, OVH, Siemens, and so on. I mean, all of these so-called day one members can be found in the GAIA-X page. They found the Brussels-based GAIA-X ISBL, with that I will then call association or organization. ISBL is an internationally acting non-profit organization based on Belgian law. Yeah, so they applied for that in September 2020, and officially it was signed by the Belgian king in January 2021, as far as I remember correctly. And as of today, there were more than 2,500 contributors, and more around roughly 300 or maybe a bit more member organizations, of which 289 are from the European Union. And there are currently 12 countries participating. So in the picture, that's actually also from the GAIAX official website, there are rather three corner stones, you can say, that is all built on. So there is GAIAX Management Association with a board of directors with different committees. I will also go into this a bit later. There are also working groups, 6 working groups under the GAIAX Association, in which I'm also involved in some of them. And then there are different GAIAX hubs exactly from these 12 countries. So currently there are already hubs existing in Belgium, Finland, Germany, Italy, and so on. And of course, originally GAIAX was driven and founded by community. So originally there were only community open working packages. And nowadays we have both. We have working groups of ISPL and we have also community open working packages that are open to everyone. So that's how it all started, and that's a bit of organization of today. Now the question is why it all started. Why do we need GAIAX? The reason it was initiated was the need for a secure, open, and sovereign data infrastructure. That's a rather official definition, or how it is defined, just to get a better understanding. So when we talk about open, in this case, we mean everything that is produced under the GAIA-X label should be open source. Moreover, transparent operations is another key value of an open ecosystem that GAIA-X is. Nowadays, for example, some of the big cloud service providers also use open source softwares, for example, as Kubernetes cluster. However, the changes that they made to this open source software, or the way that they're being adapted to the commercial use, is rather invisible to the user. That's why here the sovereignty also plays an important role and refers to avoiding the provider lock-in, so-called hyperscalers, meaning also that the user has full control and flexibility in regards to his data. So if we look at the picture, and if we look at today's cloud providers, the way they handle their business and users is rather concentrated, proprietary, and opaque. On the contrary, GAIA-X aims at establishing distributed, open, and friendly ecosystem. So in this way, self-determined decisions can be made on how and where data is processed, stored, and used. So trust and sovereignty are not only the principles, are the so-called European values, the values that European Commission has defined in their documents and how they see things should be handled in society, but also in the business. Now let's have a look at the GAIAX ecosystem. GAIAX ecosystem mainly considers 3 parts, or like how you also see it maybe in the picture. There we have in the blue data ecosystem, namely from the networking, we can call it an application layer, sorry. So here we have different various use cases from different data spaces. Data spaces meaning like healthcare or automotive industry or industry 4.0 or agriculture and so on and so on. And they of course have their advanced smart services with varying demands. Then on the bottom of this, we have infrastructure ecosystem. Infrastructure ecosystem is addressed in GAIA-X via 3 elements. So computing, storage, and interconnection. In the middle, so these 4 green boxes, we have federation services. Federation services are necessary to enable a federation of infrastructure and data provided through an open source reference. There are 4 of them, so identity and trust, sovereign data exchange, compliance. But in my talk, I will rather concentrate on the federated catalog, as I see it really the key element that connects and ensures the interoperability and interaction between the different use cases and the infrastructure ecosystem, or you can say between providers and consumers. So federated catalog is, you can imagine, yeah, like a database. I mean, explaining it in a simple terms, containing self-descriptions of participants. Self-descriptions, by self-descriptions, we mean the description files that are provided in a machine-readable format. As at this point, we're using JSON-LD or Turtle of the different GAIAX entities that are defined by GAIAX conceptual model. And of course, in such a way, the federated catalog will contain will contain composable service descriptions for creation of different setups that these use cases or from the data ecosystem require. When we talk about this whole ecosystem, so federated ecosystem, the question, of course, is that how can all of this, so the data, the services, and infrastructure interact seamlessly or interact such that it all interoperates? Here, of course, interoperability and interconnection are the keys for the success. The keys for the success. And now, if we look at the use cases, not only here are we talking that they're specifically GAIAX use cases, where rather these are the use cases that we're experiencing nowadays, and also there will be more of this in the future. So we are living in the era of digitalization. So we already are shifting. The current trend is to the e-manufacturing. We are working from home, so we have video conferencing, virtual desktops, we have e-healthcare, and in the nearest future also many autonomous driving cars. So all of these use cases, starting from the private to business to the industrial ones, have specific, very specific or very demanding networking interconnection requirements. So we've studied or researched that in scope of GAIAX, but also in scope of DE-CIX. And we've realized that the specific requirements are, of course, the dynamic bandwidths, the monitoring. Here we mean, like, for example, such things as end-to-end SLAs. So in order to ensure this, we need to have the special or effective monitoring in place. Of course, these applications or these use cases are extremely latency sensitive. So of course, each of them, but just an example here, for example, if we want to achieve latency of less than 1 millisecond, then we need to also ensure that the distance between receiver and transceiver is according. That's why the current trend is also moving to the edge systems. Of course, we want to have our network resilient. Here, there's just a few examples to me. So things like dynamic provisioning, redundancy, etc. And of course, also like mentioned on the first slide, security is also one of the key aspects here, going from network isolation to the DDoS mitigation, attack mitigation, and so on. And of course, what is also maybe a bit obvious that best effort internet cannot ensure these requirements. Best effort is best effort, as we know. And what all of this means is that nowadays we want to have, or the users want to have, the connection with guarantees, or this use cases really require the connection with guarantees. And just to look at rather simplified, really simplified such a use case scenario, how it all could interact and look when we put all of this together. So we have Bob, so end user or consumer, call it as you want, that wants to have a multi-cloud setup. In this case, rather for the explanation reason, we consider only 2 clouds, but in the reality, of course, it could be much more complicated. And he wants to ensure seamless data transfer from A to B, or maybe he wants to have, I don't know, one virtual machine running in cloud A and the other virtual machine running in cloud B, and the network connection between those, that they could exchange the data. Very many real scenarios could be here possible, but here's rather for the explanation reasons. So what he does, he queries the federated catalog with the requirements, exactly. So he needs 2 cloud services at A and B, and he specifies the interconnection and networking requirements. Again, as an example, I've mentioned here, for example, he wants 10 gigabits per second, 10 millisecond latency, and rather high availability. And what would happen then? So he queries the catalog, he presses enter, and the output of the federated catalog would be the composable network and interconnection services. So the provider of the data cloud A has a self-description of himself and the services. The same applies to the data cloud B. And of course, in order to ensure this connection between those two, we have one or many possible interconnection and networking providers on the way between those two. So that's rather the idea and the example of how it all could look like. Now, if we're thinking of the solution, how it all could work. So basically, as already mentioned, what we want is exactly this secure data infrastructure or data infrastructures with guarantees, or that some of them also I mentioned. So how could all this look like, or how could the framework for this implementation look like? So we just saw these 2 cloud service providers. And in order to, and if we look at the network layer between those two, we can have a cascade of different provider cascades. So coming from, it can be a network service provider, like in this example, internet exchange point, but it also can be a network operator or internet service provider, or even the internal network of the use case of that is querying the catalog. So we imagine that this could, that the architecture for this could look like. So what we need on the network layer. It all starts and builds on the interconnection between these different cascades. We need to interconnect them first. Then on top, we have the network management stack that is managing the network and interconnections. And then, of course, we need the interfaces to the upper networking broker layer that then that is logically central, and of course has a high dependency with the GAIAX architecture and executes the commands that are coming to him. And all of this that we see in red then can be described as a networking service that you can find in GAIAX federated catalog. Sorry. On top of that, there will be a cloud layer. If we look at that horizontally. So again, the similar structure, exactly the same logic. There will be an interface coming from networking broker layer to the upper layer. There will be a cloud management stack where the different cloud service providers are represented. Here we're talking about, for example, Kubernetes clusters and so on. And then, of course, also we need the interface to the cloud broker layer. That is, again, logically centered and has a dependency with the GAIAX in architecture. And logically, it will be a one composable service described by self-description and discoverable, and it will be discoverable in a federated catalog, as I've mentioned, and can be used by different use cases that are represented in GAIAX data spaces. Yes, so that's roughly the idea that we are proposing. How could it look like and work like? Coming back to the GAIAX Association, as I already mentioned, it's a non-profit, it's open to everyone, and there are various community-driven working packages, but also different working groups. So I will start from the top on the right. So as I already mentioned, there is board of directors, there's management board of GAIAX Association, and there's also different committees. And here I want to really concentrate on the technical committee that I am also, or DE-CIX is part of. The technical committee consists out of 6, or under the technical committee, there are 6 working groups, namely user provider, cross association, architecture, federation services, and portfolio. Under these working groups, there are further sub-working groups and open working packages. And if you have interest in how many are there and which are there, I can show you that in the discussion. I have backup slide. But here, rather, I want to concentrate on the sub-working group interconnection and networking that we are leading. And here, just for giving you the overview, here are some of the companies that are present in this group. These are just some, I didn't put them all, but as you see, very competent companies in the telecommunication business. And we are meeting weekly, and next meeting is actually already tomorrow. So if you're interested, you're very welcome to join us. Moreover, there are many events happening during the year. Usually there is always a November summit. There was November summit in 2020, and there is another one upcoming in this November, so November 18 and 19. And I'm also planning the interconnection on premises meeting here in the Frankfurt office of DE-CIX. And if, again, you want to know more about that, you're free to ask that. We'll be really happy to inform. Yes, and this sub-working group is aligned under the architecture working group. I forgot to mention that. And I mean, we're involved in the architecture group and in the provider group. That's where we also work in. Yes, and just coming already to the outlook, what already I showed regarding the infrastructure ecosystem, we can see that there are various providers present. So we have really a challenge to align between multi-stakeholders is always a challenging task. So because we want to ensure the portability and interoperability between exactly these different kinds of providers that are also mentioned here. We need also mechanisms to being developed to find, combine, and connect services. So what going the direction of the composable services or network service composition from participating providers in order to enable such a user-friendly infrastructure ecosystem. Moreover, GAIAX also supports distributed use cases, as also I was showing today and mentioning. So we want to have being able to make it possible different on-premises setups and also multi-cloud setups. And GAIAX should address the complete technical stack, including infrastructure and existing network interconnection requirements. There are different documents, one of them for that reason where we specify what should be exactly addressed. There's architecture of standards, there's technical architecture document, for example, that we update on a quarter basis. Yeah, so many challenging tasks, many interesting tasks, and yeah, so still it's a living ecosystem. The work is going on, and I hope that this was informative, useful for you. And if you want to know more about GAIAX, here I've also included a couple of links. So on the official website of GAIAX, you can find definitely more information. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to give you this talk. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the discussion and the questions.
Thank you, Alina, for that very interesting presentation. Do we have any questions? Ah, Stephen, go.
Yeah, so I thank you for this overview. It's quite clear. So I have one question when we're talking about the architecture side of things. I'm involved from my side in the GAIAX API effort, where DE-CIX together with Links are also involved. Is there any kind of connection there? Do you see that happening, or is this something that's completely separate from that?
No, we've included GAIAX API into the architecture of standards. As we also, I mean, again, it's exactly fitting into all of this. It's open source. IXPs are working on that, and for the IXPs, it's, yeah, rather has a potential to become actually a standard of doing things. Yeah, so it's included. Yeah, I think on Monday, the new architecture of standard document was approved. So I think it will be published soon, and you will find GAIAX API mentioned there.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Maurizio from Namex. I would like to have some comments from Alina of the possible rules that Internet Exchange Point can play on the infrastructure, I think, mainly.
What do you mean? Yeah, thank you for your question. What do you mean by rules?
I think that Internet Exchange Point are things to be part of the infrastructure, although they are not mentioned in the slide that showed to us. We talk a lot about interconnection. So, I mean, but if you want, I would like to have some more information or comments of the possible rule position fallback to the Internet Exchange Point. Is the infrastructure thing? Are we building the GAIA-X infrastructure based on the existing infrastructure as the Internet Exchange Point, or are we building something completely different?
In general, yes. Yeah, thanks. There are many questions I will try to answer. Yes, first of all, we don't mention directly always IXPs. We rather say network interconnection providers, meaning here IXPs, internet service providers, network service providers, but some in the brackets we say, for example, IXPs. Rather going in the abstract way here, but it's what is meant here. Moreover, people from the IXPs are present in the groups, or we're really, so to say, maybe not fighting, but really insisting on that the role of IXPs should be not overseen in the whole GAIAX concept. So there's, for example, topics, NetNo. We're working closely together on that. And also in our proposed solution here, I mentioned actually directly for example, the Internet Exchange Points. So, but it's really in the objective, but unfortunately, like until very recently, there were actually not so many IXPs present in the GAIAX, I mean, as members. or its interest. But now more and more are joining. So yes, definitely. So I don't know, I hope I could answer your question.
Yes. So do you think that as an association of IXP, we can work together and try to push because internet exchange point have a real role in this infrastructure? I think that this is something that we can do as an association.
So you mean between the GAIAX Association and GAIAX Association?
Well, yeah, in general, as internet exchange point, the association is, it's something that can that might represent us in this way. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's possible, but that's rather like not up to me, but the management board of the GAIAX. But I'm definitely sure, because there are many open other associations present.
Thanks, Alina. Are there any more questions? Ismail.
Hello, this is Ismail.
Hi. Hello. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, Alina. I'd like to ask you just one point, that how that GAIAX supports the distributed use cases like the multi-cloud setup. What do you mean by that?
Well, there are some use cases that would require. So you want to know what the multi-cloud setup is?
Just briefly.
Okay. That, for example, could be a setup from if you need, let's say, a cloud service provider, OVH, and then another cloud service provider as, for example, the Plus server or Amazon, and you want to have you want to have a setup between those different, or it could also be a sector-specific cloud, for example, for where the health data is stored or the agriculture data. And you want to have, I don't know, like that in one of the clouds your data is stored, in the other one, for example, this data is processed, and maybe in the third, the output of this processing is there. And then you would, of course, need the connection between them such that it all can work and interact together.
So it's something like integration between them, right?
Rather connection.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Christoph.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Alina, for the excellent presentation. So maybe clarification. So Cloud Router is something that customers tend to request for IXPs or ISPs that offer sort of productized express routes for AWS, Azure, like the big clouds. And the idea is that you have a routing instance between these clouds and on-prem maybe, or yeah, just between two clouds, because you have the workloads distributed in the two clouds. Maybe one is a data store and the other one has the processing logic or whatever it might be. We actually really have requests and demand for it. And coming a bit back to the question, how and why IXPs should contribute or should have a look at GAIAX. I mean, Alina explained a bit like from a governmental perspective and how the inner working is. That said, we actually see that here is an opportunity where governments or the EU bodies at a very high level are interested in internet and internet infrastructure. And of course, this is an open approach where everyone is invited. I'm happy to see GAIAX coming there. I'm not entirely sure that Alina is probably the one that can answer who is legally allowed to contribute and join, if an association is okay, or if it's only okay if you can provide certain resources or something like this. But I guess that's rather smooth sailing. What they don't try is to really build something new, right? So they want to rely on existing infrastructure, businesses, and so on, and just want to aggregate it. If you want to have a very simple and comparable example, it's Airbus, right? So there were like 30 years ago or even longer ago, quite successful with Airbus, which is like the dominant player or one of the dominant players in the market as of today. And the politics view is now we have the very same situation with the oligopoly or sort of monopoly in the clouds. And this monopoly with Azure and AWS and Alibaba and you name it, like the big tech companies, they want to see that there is some European counterpart to it. And they are clear about they won't be able to just found such a mega company. They need to take in consideration what's there and aggregate it and make it one catalog of existing things built very smart and nicely together. And our view is we don't know whether this is going to be successful or not, but it's definitely worth having a look at it and making sure that IXPs are not under the radar. And that's a bit the role we're trying to play there, to say there is an association, there are IXPs in each and every country, in each city. The infrastructure is there. How can we integrate them into the entire endeavor of GAIA-X? And the other part is also you might be able to acquire some public funding from your national governments, because EU is giving an incentive for local governments or for national governments to support the GAIA-X project and yeah, have tenders where you can apply with projects. And that's also of our interest. I mean, probably not the highest interest and not the highest interest for all of us, but that could be something why you would want to get involved. I hope that this clarifies a bit more also in Maurizio's direction.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Christoph. Valeria.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Alina. Your presentation was very clear. Just a point, is GAIA-X going to give some recommendations about where data will be stored? I mean, we are talking about federation, we are talking about interconnection, latencies, but talking about sovereignty of data, I guess that there are some specification at least for be sure that the data are within the borders where the rules are applied. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that will be specified. Again, this will be and should be specified, because as I mentioned, this should be transparent to the user where his data is stored. So, and so if the provider provides this information, he will have according label, so to say, I don't know, like sovereign data trusted provider, something like that. Just in this example, it's still work in progress. And if he doesn't provide this information, then the label of this provider will also be according, I don't know, like basic or something like that. This is work in progress, but that's definitely the idea.
So all data flow will be within the European borders?
Yes, or if not, then this also should, like, the user should be informed about that.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Are there any other questions? We have one in the chat who says, who will run broker layer?
Yeah, I saw that. Rather no one, I would say, because that's as Chris mentioned, their project tenders, and this is the proposal which we applied and got the funding from the German government. So there are 10 companies involved, and who will be exactly the networking broker layer running, that's gonna be then known after the 3 years when the project ends.
Thanks. I actually have a question as well. So what are GAIA-X's core deliverables?
Thanks, Bajal. I have a slide for that. So that's rather was communicated from the GAIAX association, so the standards or specifications, how they also like to call it. So there's we're always working on the architecture of standard and technical architecture document. So fundamental services of GAIA-X. So I think that's going into the federation services. Data spaces facilitation. That's, I guess, to the data space business committee to work on that and to deliver this. And the software communities. So there will be open source federated services. Everything, again, will be run open source and interaction also with the other communities. There are really currently many communities that apply and want to even already deliver a code, like ready code solutions to GAIAX. Yeah, so the association is working on aligning of all of this, making reviewing it, seeing what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, how to make it all interoperable, and for example, what has also the potential of being standardized and becoming the, let's say, GAIAX standard or being released under the GAIAX label.
Yeah. How can we actually, before I ask that question, one question, for not just for internet, well, specifically for internet exchange points, what are the key benefits of joining? I know that you've mentioned a few, but could you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I guess some of them Chris explained, but I mean, key benefits is exactly to set the role and to participate, setting the role of XPs. Exactly, we have the infrastructure there, and the role of them should not be overlooked. Well, you're participating in the global project, global agile project, and you're working. And for example, also, like there are companies that we're working together inside of my group, like for example, Equinix. On the market, we are rather competitors, but inside GAIAX, we have exactly the same view, and like we work all together one goal. And I think that's really also another nice thing. Yeah, and of course that we know, or like we all have a vision of how the digital or digitalization of Europe should look like. And in my opinion, it only will work if we all work together. Maybe just to name some few reasons.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you. So if we want to participate, how can we do that?
You write me an email. That's the first step, and then I will see what I can do, and I will definitely communicate that further to the GAIAX management team, and we can talk about the details.
And is that I mean, like for not specifically for your IX, but for IXPs in general, if they want more information or want to join,
yeah, they can just go to these links. First of all, if that I mentioned, I mean, just Google GAIAX, or you just write me an email or you call me and I put my phone there. Really, I'm very happy and excited to welcome new members if there are some that want to join. Yeah, and also just if you have some questions, answer your questions and help you also with if you really want to join and are interested. And I think maybe also for just to have an idea what it is, I also mentioned there is a call of our group tomorrow. So if you want to participate in that, again, just drop me a message and I will send you the call invite.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, so Alina, thank you very much for that excellent presentation and answering all those some difficult questions. There's a last comment in here. There will be a window of opportunity for current IXPs to evolve into service composition points and federate. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so with that, thank you everyone. Thank you, Alina, for your time and the presentation.